Welcome to this short recording giving a little background to the UK university sector. Many students who we work with on the Community Research Initiative are international students, and this means there's an added layer of new things to learn. With this recording, we aim to explain a little bit about the higher education sector in the UK, funding and current tensions. Higher education in the UK is the responsibility of the UK Government's Department for Education. There is a Secretary for State for Education, and the department works closely with a number of non-ministerial and non-department bodies, including local authorities. Education is one of the policy areas that is devolved in the UK. This means a transfer of power away from the central government to regional government. The UK comprises 4 nations: Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland and England, and being devolved means that, in Scotland for example, it is the Scottish Government rather than the UK Government that takes responsibility for education. This includes things like setting student fees, assessments and qualifications, and teacher training. UCL is a higher education institution. In 2019, there were 164 higher education institutions in the UK. A little over half of these are in the most recent top world university rankings, and 3 are in London itself: King's College London, University College London and Imperial College London. King's and UCL, as they're better known, are part of the University of London. University of London is a federal university with 17 independent member institutions. You belong to UCL, but also University of London, which does give you access to a wide range of facilities and services. UCL is currently ranked 4th in the world and 2nd in London, which has probably formed a large part of your decision to study here. Last year, a little over 48,000 students studied at UCL. Study levels are undergraduate, which you have all done or an equivalent, or postgraduate. Postgraduate study is split into postgraduate taught, which is what we know as a master's course, and sometimes referred to as a PGT. And then there's doctorate or PhD level study, and there are also postgraduate diplomas, certificates of education and professional degrees. At UCL last year, a little over 20,000 students studied a master's. Universities are funded from a number of different sources, and the 3 key sources are government via the Higher Education Funding Council for England, and the other UK nations have different bodies serving the same function. Also tuition fees, as well as to a lesser extent student residence charges, and finally research income. This mostly comes from 7 research councils, but also charities, government departments, industry and commerce. There are tensions in the higher education sector currently. These are of a financial nature. Since 2010, the proportions from the different funding streams are shifting. Less now comes in from the government, meaning that more needs to be charged to students, with an increased emphasis on international students who pay higher fees. There's also a changed emphasis in research funding to the funders that provide direct overheads to the university through their grants. There are accusations of the marketisation of education in the UK, with really radical change to traditional policies and practice in the state provision of education, namely students covering the full cost of their education. Another tension is around staff workload and working conditions, and like with everything, some of these have been exacerbated by the effects of the pandemic, but even pre-pandemic, staff workloads have increased, pensions are being reduced, and there's an increased casualisation of staff. That is, fixed-term contracts and the instability that this brings. And the third tension is around students and the value for money. Student experience, diversity and access to education and progression through education are all areas of tension. Taken together, life at some UK universities is a little uncomfortable, with recent large-scale industrial action and student protests. Many feel that key issues were sidelined, understandably of course, as we dealt with the effects of the pandemic. However, these topics have not gone away, and tensions are likely to continue to some extent as the changes that began in earnest in 2010 look set to remain and continue.